Welcome to episode 53 of the Practice Squad, our season 3 finale, a show where we talk about football, shoot the breeze, and make even the replacement refs cringe. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co-host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
Pretty tired. Can't believe it's the last show, and honestly, still can't accept what happens uh, with Brady and the Patriots. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that when we talk about the game, but wow, what a flop. So we have been live every Tuesday here on YouTube at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. We're running a little bit late tonight due to the fact that both of us had to work a little late tonight. But this is our last episode, and we're anticipating probably a fairly short episode tonight. So stick with us. It won't be too long before you can hang up, say farewell to the NFL season, and go to sleep tonight. If you like what you hear and want to support us, don't hesitate to like, share, and if you're feeling extra generous, subscribe. You can like, share, and subscribe even if you think you could run this show better than us. So this week for our season 3 finale, we're gonna talk about that darn Super Bowl, even if we fall asleep doing it. And we wanted to kind of just spend our typical special segment time talking about the kind of how the show went this year, casually looking forward to next year, and maybe some ideas for how we may want to switch some things up or things we liked or disliked about this the show this season. So if you have any thoughts about that, we would love your feedback. So make sure to sound off in the comments either during the episode or anytime afterwards. We will read those and do our best to try to incorporate that feedback to make season 4 the greatest thing since sliced bread. So let's dive into the Super Bowl. And I think Joseph and I would both say, let's get this over with. So, the start wasn't so bad. I think in the first, so I didn't write down the scores by quarter. I kind of took my notes a little bit differently this time because I was at a small gathering watching the game, and first quarter was Bucks 7-3. And so from a score perspective, it didn't really start to get out of hand till the end of the first half. But you could tell and pretty early on that Patrick Mahomes was off. His synergy with his receivers was off. He wasn't clicking with them at all. And they were having problems. And I think the real moment that I would say kind of marked the beginning of the end was the complete and utter collapse of Tyrann Mathieu in the first half. He got back-to-back penalties, and just I think he had this attitude that seemed to infect kind of the team as a whole, especially the defense, and they just were not really effectively able to stop Brady, despite the fact that, I mean, Brady didn't put up amazing stats, but he did complete most of his passes. He was 21 for 29, which is, I do some quick math, 72% completion. So that's not anything a defense would be proud of. He only threw for 200 yards, but he did throw 3 touchdowns, only sacked once. So this just wasn't the defensive performance that I think a lot of people were expecting from the Chiefs, who had actually kind of made their way through the playoffs to some extent with their defense, and especially their O line or their D line. So, I thought the game was still kind of boring throughout because there wasn't a whole lot going on in the first quarter. You didn't really know how things were going to go, and then things started to get a little out of hand in the second half. Then there's halftime, you come back out, and the Bucks score 10 points in the third quarter, and then nobody scored at all in the fourth quarter, which is like the last thing that you want from a Super Bowl. In fact, I can't remember the last time there was a Super Bowl where nobody scored in the fourth quarter. Maybe the Patriots Rams, possibly. I don't know. Do you remember?
No, I thought.
Can you think of any recent Super Bowls where there was no scoring in the fourth quarter?
Oh no.
So honestly, I mean, I wanted the Bucks to win this game. I thought the Chiefs would win it, but I wanted the Bucks to win it because I'm still salty about last year. But I was also the Chiefs were doing so poorly. I almost wanted them to score a touchdown later because I thought, oh, well, do something to like make this more than just me eating chips, because that's kind of all it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, people have talked about the refereeing, and I think it was somewhat inconsistent. I thought the refs perhaps had their hands a little bit too deep in the game. I don't. It's not rigged. There's not necessarily a bias. It's just I think they had too much to say, and it just happened to be that most of those penalties went against the Chiefs. In fact, the Chiefs had 95 penalty yards in the first half, which is the most in Super Bowl history for a half, just to give perspective. So I did make sure to tell Joseph that there was a call on a holding call on the Chiefs O-line. I did gloat about that to Joseph, so I said I was going to do that, and I followed through. I'm a man of my word. And there were some very blatant holds that were not called. Specifically, there was one on JPP where you could just see so clearly, collar and mask being grabbed and nobody not being called. So they continue to get away with cheating, even though there were still lots of penalties that were called for things that might not have been cheating. I guess the one thing I wanted to ask you about, Joseph, is the kind of the, I guess I don't have another word for it other than revitalization of Leonard Fournette. I mean, he didn't have amazing stats in this game. They were good. 16 carries for 89 yards, 5.6 average, and a touchdown. And then he had another 46 receiving yards. So he was a big part of the offense, no doubt. But I just feel like he had gotten hurt with the Jags. He was not, he kind of had almost drifted into memory, and then he just had this career revitalization with the Bucks.
Yeah, I kind of had that good rookie year, right, for the Jags. Then kind of slowed down. So it was good to see him get picked up by the Bucks. And how about Jones, right? I mean, Jones and Fournette are now like a solid duo running back. I said duo, running back duo in the league. I mean, what's a better running back duo than them two right now? Jones and Fournette.
I could probably come up with one, but I can't think of one at the moment.
So yeah, no, it's glad to see his career kind of come back, and that hopefully that can maintain.
Yeah, we've always said sometimes it just takes a change of scenery. You could tell that the Jags had sort of lost trust in him, and so coming to a new organization, especially an organization that was set up to succeed like the Bucks, was just a great landing place for him. I couldn't think of really a better spot for him to land. So the refs also missed a kind of a dumb interception. There was a ball that bounced off of someone's hand and Levante David caught it, and he even told the ref, "Hey, it bounced off the guy's hand," and they showed a replay, and it was clearly bounced off his hand, not the ground, and they didn't call it a pick. So there should have been actually 3. Mahomes should have had 3 interceptions, not 2, but only 2 were called. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all. I don't really have any meta thoughts on the game other than the Fournette point and just the penalties and the refereeing against in the game that happened to lean against the Chiefs. So I mean, watching this game, you would have never thought that Travis Kelce had 10 receptions for 133 yards. I mean, there's no way you would have guessed that stat after the game, just based on how poorly they played. But the Bucs just did a really good job not giving up that big play, and the Chiefs never made it in the end zone. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have a whole lot more to say. This was a disappointing Super Bowl, the worst Super Bowl since the Patriots-Rams. Maybe worse than that, just because at least that game was still, the score was still close.
Yeah.
I
mean, or Broncos Panthers. That one had some good defense, but that one wasn't very good either. Those 3 might be the worst while.
Yeah.
But I feel like this one's the worst only because of the Chiefs just did nothing. Like, it was just a surefire team come out and play, at least compete. And yeah, the offensive line was just trash, and Mahomes was running for his life. And I'm surprised the Chiefs didn't put that much pressure on Brady. And yeah, one side Super Bowl.
Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is hopefully teams that are looking to beat the Chiefs look at this formula. I mean, I think the Bucs definitely came in with a good game plan on defense, and they have the talent to back it up. But this is, if you want to beat the Chiefs, that's how you beat them. And only 2 other teams were able to do that this year. Okay, so I did have a wrecked face this week, and this is not just a wrecked face this week. I thought that this is a wrecked playoffs, like wrecked the face off of the playoffs. Devin White, I cannot say enough good things about him. I mean, he's quickly become one of my favorite NFL players, watching him in the postseason this year. He had 12 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a pass defended, and an interception. He's just a great, fast, physical linebacker who's good in against the run game and in coverage, and he's just one of the best all around. You could maybe argue he is the best linebacker right now, and that's coming from someone that is a huge fan of Fred Warner. So, I enjoy watching him, and he's obviously one of the biggest reasons why the Bucs made it to the trophy. So we'll save our story segment, our special segment, for a few minutes from now. I had one darndest thing, and that was there was a moment where Tony Romo, it was kind of when they had nothing to talk about because the game was pretty much already over, and they were already talking about how, Brady was gonna get his 7th ring, and then saying, well, he's the GOAT and everything. And then they started talking about, okay, well, what will Mahomes need to do to overtake Brady as the GOAT? And he said, Tony Romo was like, well, he's going to need to get to at least 8 Super Bowls. He's going to need to at least be in 8 Super Bowls to steal GOAT from Brady. And I immediately thought of you, Joseph, when I heard that, because I thought of how many hours in our friendship in college and since college you have railed against sports media for putting too much emphasis on playoff performance in determining who is the best or amongst the best players, specifically quarterbacks, of all time. So given that Romo said that, what is your thought about what Mahomes would need to do to overcome Brady and kind of the whole idea of the number of Super Bowls being a metric for that.
So there's great irony. Almost um almost proves my point by what he said. Notice how he didn't say Super Bowl wins. He said appearances. And so his own point is kind of a little self-refuting because it says nothing about his performance in those Super Bowls, and it says nothing about the win outcome in the Super Bowls. So it doesn't even go with the cliche of Super Bowl wins, and it doesn't even go with the good analysis of performance in the playoffs or regular
So
season.
to cut you off real quick, he did mention something. I can't quite remember. He mentioned something about, he said 6-2, which I think was what I think he meant. Mahomes would need to win 6 and be in 8.
Okay.
Just to be fair.
Yeah. So again, my first question is why? Why is it 6-2? Because if it's, why is it not 7-1 or 8-0? Does Brady get punished for the 3 losses? Why does Mahomes get more? That's the thing. He's implying that Mahomes gets more weight based on something else. Obviously, the possibility of him having a better regular season performance and overall playoff performance without the wins, to make it such that 6 wins not only ties Brady but passes him. So there's implied when you know, it's like in a debate. Someone gives their position and you just see all the holes, and then when you cross-examine them, right, they come to light. So I feel like that this position not survive cross-examination by most other analysts, to be honest. And yeah, so it's like, what is it? Why does Mahomes have to win less Super Bowls but somehow be better than Brady, even though Brady beat him at an older age and he has more Super Bowls? So what is he implying that Mahomes has that Brady doesn't? If that's the case, why is it 6 not 5-3? Why is it not 5-1? Why is it not 4-2? You know, so it's just it's at best, at worst inconsistent and possibly dishonest. So
yeah, so I agree with all that, and I think the part of the issue is the Peyton Manning dilemma, which I just officially coined, meaning I think there's reasons to argue that Peyton Manning is the best regular season quarterback of all time. But you would not argue at this point that Peyton Manning is the best overall quarterback of all time. And so if Mahomes was somehow able to surpass Manning as the greatest regular season quarterback of all time, then how much would he need to duplicate of Brady's success in the playoffs to overtake him as the GOAT? And I think that question all comes down to how much should regular season success be weighted and how much should playoff success be weighted? Specifically, Super Bowls and your Super Bowl performance. And you can't forget about the teams that these guys played on. I mean, Brady would not have been here without Devin White and Levante David and Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh and all these guys that just played like monsters this offseason.
He did have probably one of the strongest teams. That might be one of the strongest teams he's ever had, to be honest.
What, good defenses?
Just overall. I mean, the offensive weapons, and the defense. Like, yeah, he's had some good defenses, he has, but I mean, this was definitely in the top half of defense, and definitely top 10% of offense.
Oh yeah, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, Gronk, Chris Godwin.
Jones. Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, I mean, they had like a top 5 offense overall. So it doesn't take away from what he did, but I just don't understand. It's just almost expected, I guess. So how do you weigh what he had? How do you weigh what the Chiefs should have done with what they had? That gets all complicated. So I don't mind the complication. I just mind when people just ignore the complication and think that they're actually making it simpler by going with simple things like the Super Bowl, and they're actually making it more complicated.
Right. Yeah. we have talked about how Brady has had consistently more better weapons on average and probably better defenses on average than his closest peers like Breeze, Rodgers, Manning. And so you have to factor that in, even though I think this did seal Tom Brady as the greatest of all time. And maybe you could have argued that before the Super Bowl, but it you have to factor that in when you discuss these things. And it is certainly something that very few commentators bring up. Okay, so moving on from that, I wanted to just quickly go over our postseason pick record. So we obviously both picked Chiefs and they lost in a flop. So we were 0-1, and my final playoff record was 7-6, which is a meager 54%, and yours was 8-5 with 61%. So you did beat me by a game in the postseason. I describe that as my record anyway, is a pretty pathetic postseason record that's barely better than 500. But it cannot take away from my beautiful 67% regular season record. So overall, I'd say I feel pretty good about the picks this year. I now have the practice squad record at 67%, which I think is going to be pretty hard to beat, to be honest. I'd made a spreadsheet of our picks, and I noticed this year that I did really well in the first 7 to 8 weeks, and then weeks 8 through 14 were mostly barely over 500. And then it picked up again a little bit in the final week or two. And I've noticed that that's actually been kind of an issue for several seasons that we've been doing picks, which is obviously stretches beyond this show. And I don't really have a good explanation for that, because you'd think that it would be the first 4 or 5 weeks where the records would be the worst, because that's when teams are still finding their identities, getting settled in. There's a lot more upsets and stuff like that. But I don't know. Do you think it maybe had something to do with COVID and no home field advantage? And
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there was the home field advantage disappeared. Home field advantage just didn't matter. Year, or I'm saying didn't matter completely, but it was definitely less effective.
Yeah, and that did make the picks overall easier. It did. I can think of many picks that it did make easier, so maybe that's why my percentage you might consider a little bloated because of that. But yeah, I think the picks were good, and I feel like I'm learning, I'm getting better at identifying potential trap games or games that everybody thinks will go a certain way that might not really go that way. Understanding my gut a little bit more on stuff like that. So overall, there's kind of been improvement from season to season, which is pretty cool to see. So I guess we'll close out the show. Before we do that, did you have anything that you wanted to say about the stuff we've talked about so far, Joseph? Okay.
No.
So I kind of wanted to close out the show by just spending a couple minutes talking about the way that this season 3 of the Practice Squad went, and things that we liked or disliked, things we might want to change for next year. So I can go first, just real quick. Won't take too long, and then I'll give it over to you. So I really liked that we moved away from talking about the Niners and the Dolphins as much and focused more on games, having multiple games to talk about each week, more on stories and special segments and different things going on in the league. and I felt like I learned more about other teams doing that, and I have a greater appreciation for the league as a whole because of that. Um, I would say I think on the downside, I think we had planned to maybe have a little bit more stories and news coverage this year than we actually did. I think we might have been a little bit light on that this year, and that could be something to improve on next year. I would love to bring in some funny news stories, or maybe start doing like an email system where we have viewers that send email. If we get an email from someone, we can answer questions or have ideas for discussion topics, stuff like that, to bring a little bit more variety. So that could be one potential area of improvement next year. But generally, I like our formula. I mean, I like the darndest things. I like our picks. I liked the addition of the tricky picks this year too. I thought you did a fantastic job coming up with those. Those were always creative and caused me to think about what I wanted to pick. And I found that I actually didn't really care a whole lot about my tricky pick record, even though that was something I did track in the notes. It's not something that I really just looked forward to. Oh, what does Joseph have this week, and what kind of crazy logical scenarios are there to figure out? So that was just really fun. I thought that was a great idea you had, and glad we implemented that. And then I think our game discussion was good. I like that we had a game of the week where we'd watch the condensed version on NFL Game Pass, and then we had some highlight versions where we just got a chance to see different teams play. And I don't think we covered every team. I know that was a goal we had at the beginning of the year. So we can be accountable to that. I don't think we covered every team this year. For example, I don't think we watched a Jets game, did we?
um, so not formally, but we did have that talk about the crazy. No, that was Dolphins Raiders. Never mind. Well, I thought we did Dolphins Jets. Oh,
We did do a couple of different
no,
Dolphins games, but I don't think we did a Jets game this year.
I don't think we did Jets game. Did we do a Redskins game or a football team game?
Besides the playoffs, no. I don't think we did not do a regular season game.
I mean, honestly, we probably missed like 4 to 7 teams at the most. That's not bad because there were a lot of games that just needed coverage by the good teams, and there were several teams, Bills, Saints, that deserve to have 3 or 4 games left. So if we missed 15%, 20% of the teams, I think that's not that bad. But we'll see if we can possible.
Yeah, I'd like to make it a goal next year to try to at least have one highlight game for every team, and that way we can at least cover. Because I do like to see how some of the bottom of the barrel teams are playing and what they can do to improve. I just like being aware of that because there are teams like, for example, the Bills, who 3 years ago were really bad, right? And so you wouldn't have wanted to watch them 3 years ago. But then all of a sudden they got good because they were making the right decisions to bring in the right players, and they were growing quickly, right? So you want to kind of be a little bit ahead of the game on seeing that happen. I don't want to miss that for teams that are on the rise. I don't think the Jets are one of those teams, but whoever might be that. So for that reason alone, I'd like to be able to cover every team at least once, and we can make that a goal to do that next year. But enough about my thoughts. What are your thoughts, Joseph?
So I agree. I like the tricky picks. So that was fun. And doing the rec face segments, and just how we got to talk about that. I also like that we went away from talking about our teams every week. We had some good special segments, but I think at times, whether it was because we couldn't find an article or find something, or just come up with what to do, because in the past we have done several kind of on our own, already. That might have been an area where we can improve on like that story special segment article section. And I don't know if it was just because I did listen, but I don't know if it was for that reason or whatever. But I feel like Darnest things weren't as good this
I
year.
agree. I agree. We did not have as many good ones, and that's always a challenge because a lot of weeks I watch the Niner game, and then I might watch part of one other game. I try to watch the Seahawks every week, and then I also will watch whatever our game of the week is. But usually, our game of the week, I'm watching either condensed or highlights where a lot of the darndest things are said in between plays. So NFL Game Pass will cut that off, and highlights will cut that off. So if I didn't get
Yeah.
something from the Niner game, which I don't always have full audio on for, then I may not get something. And then it becomes this stressful, like, oh, did I, you know, do I need to go try to watch a game just to get one or whatever? And then we end up kind of grabbing ones that aren't as good. So I'd agree with you. I didn't think of that, but I do agree now that you said it, that that's something that I think we could maybe, um,
We should pick the announcers. That we did find some good. We did find some announcers that gave good comments. We could just try to listen to their games for maybe like quarter or half, and see what they say.
yeah. And there were a couple of really funny, in those online streams, sometimes people's comments are ridiculously funny. That there's that one with Kyler Murray and he doesn't fill the stands because he's short comment that we had. Like stuff like that where people just say absolutely ridiculous things that might be worth putting in there too. So expanding it from maybe not just a commentators, but just a sort of people talking about
NFL
the
darn
game. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we could, we'll obviously have some calls and uh, talk about this. And if you haven't, if as the viewers, if you have any feedback on the darndest things, other than hey, it wasn't that funny this year, uh, what would you like to see implemented? Feel free to reply in the comments on the YouTube video or on Twitter or on Facebook, under the link that I provided for the episode, and we will take that into account. And always, if you hear something, throw it over the fence to us because we'll definitely use it. I don't shy away from using other people's quotes if they're provided. So we'll definitely use that material if we deem that it's funny. You have to have a
Yes.
sufficient sense of humor, but if it is funny, we'll put it in there. Yeah, so I'd agree with that. Do you have any other thoughts? Things that could have been better? Things you want to maybe try next year?
I would like um, for you and I to have formal debates. I'd like I we tried it a little bit with the Mahomes versus Josh Allen for who's second MVP, and I think us taking different theses or thesi whatever statements and bouncing back and forth between like having debates like one person will take a position even if we don't even agree the position, but having to try to defend it, um, and just taking turns with that. I think that'd be fun because then we're interacting with one another and our own ideas and stuff. And it would be challenging because probably things that we'd both agree on, but then we'd have to take the other side.
Maybe we could call it the segment at each other's throats and then debate. Yeah, I'd love that. I think you and I think similarly about a lot of football related topics, so we do analysis, but it either ends up stacking on top of itself or mainly being agreements about things. And so I think if we implemented sort of a more a structure that promoted us clashing a little bit more, that could be fun. I agree with that. So we could definitely maybe have 3 or 4 segments next year that we have a little bit of time to prep for, that we could do some some uh some debates. I think that's a great idea.
Well, and the whole thing is make it really challenging depending on what the time and who's taking what. Is there's a good chance, like there's probably a 90% chance minimum that we'll end up having the same opinion like of ourselves, but one of us is going to have to argue against what we think for the sake of having that segment.
Right. Like we'll have a thesis where all have to argue against the fact that Josh Allen is underage.
And apparently his birth certificate won't be good
No,
enough.
it won't.
Oh man.
So yeah, that's some great ideas. So yeah, summarize, it would be a little more effort and maybe broaden the scope of commentators say the darndest things, potentially some debate segments where we argue over a specific topic statement or thesis statement, and then trying to incorporate all the teams into our highlights. I think those would be great. And then, as sort of a side question, which I don't think this actually has anything to do with the show, but I'm going to ask you, I have stayed away from fantasy football always. I've never done fantasy football before. Would you be interested in doing a fantasy football league next year?
No.
Well, there you have it. I guess that's a wrap then.
I did it once. Remember Johnny?
Yeah.
And was it Pastor Charles?
Yeah, that was like
What,
9 years ago, 8 years ago?
Yeah, minimum. So that group, and I just don't think I did
Is it
once.
just that it takes too much time? Or
No, it's I don't like how the system is set up. Like one thing I didn't like is you go head to head against someone each week, and it wasn't about like necessarily okay. The way I would want to do one, I also don't like that they arbitrarily boost running backs to try to push the performance between quarterbacks and running backs, which is kind of ironic because quarterbacks are certainly more valuable, but they try to get rid of that. And I actually got almost too much into it, where like people would go on the waiver wire and trying to make trades and trying to make adjustments. So that it was kind of fun to have what players would do well, but at that time I didn't have Game Pass. We were in college, so it's not like I had it all the time. I might like it more now if I watch the games. The thing is, I want to be watching them live, and so unless I watch all the highlight versions without knowing the game score beforehand, and then like getting the excitement of seeing who did well, who didn't do well, it would just take a lot of time, and it might be just out of procrastination, be like, oh, let me just look at the box score. But even then, even if that was the best it could possibly be, I just don't like the whole heads up system, and I feel like that I would prefer to be where each week you just try to gain as many points as you can based on what you do, and you can trade players and do all that. And at the end of the year, whoever has the most points, then you have a playoff system. I didn't like the whole play against opponents in the group and then you rotate. Like, no, because of how probabilistic it is, it should be over an entire season. It's already a probabilistic thing. So I make it more probabilistic by going heads up against someone. It makes it more random. When you do all this work to pick your team and align it, it makes it more random. I think is dumb. So if they just did it where, yeah, you have your assigned players, make trades and do all that, and you just calculate all of your points that you get by having your team, not doing head-to-head matchup, and then did a seeding of playoffs and did it for the playoffs teams as well, I would absolutely do fantasy football if I was a kid. Without that, I'll probably never
so
do
I
it.
know there's leagues that have different rule sets. Maybe we could find something that does sit more like that.
If we do, I will definitely consider it. Like, probably consider.
Okay. Well then,
But anything
yeah, then we'll look into it. We'll look into it for sure. I've always kind of had a curiosity about it, but I have always felt like it was just going to take too much time.
The thing is, the next thing is, sorry to interrupt. The next thing is, we need to be able to find other people to do.
Yes.
You and I, it wouldn't be fun enough to just you and I in
Right.
the group.
Yeah, I agree. We would have to find other people, which is also a challenge.
Yes.
Because we're not college bros anymore. We don't have college bro friends. Okay, so one last idea, and I think we could probably wrap up for the night is, what if we did a joint eliminator that we talked about on the show? like the ESPN Eliminator Challenge. Like we did a
Yeah.
practice squad eliminator challenge, and we do the planning and strategy for it on the show
Okay.
to pick for the
And then we just
upcoming week.
and we would have to make it a rule to where we have to have unanimous decision agreements of what to do that week. Or,
Correct. Yeah, and then it would just replace our individual ones, because once one of us falls off, I don't do it anymore after that because there's no point. So
Yeah, and I understand. I personally have no interest in doing it again since I got a perfect season last year. I was kind of like,
yeah, I just think it would be fun if we plan advance, because there is actually some fun discussion to be had about when you pick certain teams and who the best teams to pick are and all that kind of stuff. So I think it would be fun to do that over the show, and then continue to do our own personal pick lists that we'll do in the final segment in each episode.
yeah,
Okay, so it sounds like
that.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just one minor thing. I think I'm going to try. I would try. This is a possibility to tweak the tricky picks. I do like how they were done, but I want to tweak. I don't know. I almost want a larger domain of ideas to choose from. It was okay to repeat some ideas, and I did some tweaking, but because it was the first time, I want to almost like have a brainstorm, try to have more creative, challenging domain of what ideas make a tricky pick about. So I'm happy. I would give myself a B plus A minus for this year, but I'd want to improve.
Okay, sounds good. I'd be in favor of that. Cool. So we got a lot of great ideas. Looking forward to next season, season 4, and who knows what the layout of the league will look like. If we're still going to have COVID restrictions next year, hopefully not, but we might. And with the new, I think they're increasing the number of games next year.
I know.
Yeah, so I'll live through that and kind of figure out how that's going to go. We've got the draft in a couple months, about 3 months, 2.5 months. So we might, depending on if we have time, we might do a post-draft episode. I know we kind of say we might do it every year, and I don't think we've done one yet, but it would be fun if we did. And then
we haven't done a post-draft show yet?
I don't think so. We might have done one 2
2
years ago, but we really should do one. If we could, it would actually be really fun to do like a live show. If there was any way we could make that work for like the first round, the evening, like I think it starts at 4:00. If we could,
on Thursday,
get off work a couple hours early or something. I don't know. I don't know if we could make it work, but that would be really fun if we could do a live thing this year. And then I was gonna say one other thing. Oh yeah, so now that we have 3 seasons under our belt, I think it might be fun to dig back into the old episodes and maybe pull out some best of clips or funny moments or something, because I think we have enough episodes now to be able to do that. As maybe once we hit like 60 or 65 episodes or something, we can do that next year. This was episode 53 tonight. The only thing is, it is a little bit challenging with the streaming software that I use to play clips of stuff. So I'll have to dig into that a little bit more. But we shouldn't be, copyright claimed or anything, because that's our voices. If anything, I'll copyright claim them for them allowing me to use my own voice or something weird like that. So, yeah, I think it would be fun to do something along those lines. So it sounds like we've got lots of great ideas. There's no way we're going to implement all of them, most likely, but we'll talk about the ones we really have the ability to add in the off season, and we will be sure to let you know prior to in our pre-season episode next year what we decide to change, and so you guys can look forward to seeing those changes. All right, any last words, Joseph, before we wrap up season 3? Famous last words.
Technically, it's been more like 7 or 8 seasons. technically just a more formal presentation of what we've been doing for years, anyways, which is why we made the show in the first place. So technically, it's more
4
like 7
years without a mic, 3 years with a mic. Say it
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. So thank you everybody for being a part of the practice squad so far. We realize that our viewership is still incredibly small. There's not a whole lot of people that watch this show. We have no illusions that it is other than that. And so we're always feel free to share this show. This is I would say this is a family friendly show. We do not do anything that I would say violates that idea. We want this to be something that anybody could tune in and watch. And I think we're both proud of the fact that we're able to maintain a show like that is cordial yet still challenging and fun and ridiculous. So make sure to share, subscribing, liking the videos on Facebook, YouTube, that helps, but also spreading the word so that we can get more people involved in our community would be awesome as well. So with that, that is a wrap for episode 53, season 3 of the Practice Squad. If you enjoyed tonight's episode or any of our past episodes, please like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, as those are free ways for you to support our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at the Practice Squad and at Neuralizer_. Just as a reminder, if you've missed past episodes, you can watch or listen to them right here on my YouTube channel. The show is online immediately after we go live, so if you missed any of our foolish banter, you can always rewind and start from the beginning. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next season.
Peace.